Demon lords were said to be the enemy of mankind. They were absolute beings, and thus it was wise to abide by mutual inviolability in principle. He made contact with the late demon lord claimant to avoid making an enemy out of him. Through this connection, he was able to establish a friendly relationship with Yuki. All of this for a single objective: defeating the West, defeating Luminism. The reason for letting the demon lords rule over a rich territory was to make sure they would not have or not let them have territorial ambitions for other nations, so Gadra's policy was not wrong. All this became meaningless, and that was why he wanted to do the opposite and prevent the Empire from descending down the wrong path. Not to mention, Gadra saw Demon Lord Rimura in a new light. He was a kind and genial soul, and Gadra believed coexistence with him to be the wise choice. After all, even his friend, Adalman, was leading a fulfilling life, despite the drastic change in appearance compared to his previous one. Even more surprising was the strength of his country. Even Adalman, who appeared likely to be on even footing with Gadra, carried the mission to guard the 60th floor of the dungeon. While he was promoted to the guardian of floor 70, it meant that there was still someone higher up the ladder. And of course, there were his other real executives. To oppose such a country is the height of folly. Gadra was certain about it. And by extension, he was convinced the Empire would suffer a crushing defeat. He didn't know what Shinji and crew thought of Rimuru, but he felt something unfathomable about him. For this reason, he had pulled out all the stops to speak out against the war. He was let down in the end. Nevertheless, he had upheld his end of the bargain with Rimuru. Because he succeeded in directing the eyes of the Imperial Army on the dungeon, all he needed to think about was his future course of action. What happens to those who don't listen to me is no longer my concern. I will request for one last meeting with His Imperial Majesty, and then I'll be on my way to the monster country. What a remarkably imposing declaration. It's treason, then. Nothing of the sort. I just strive to live on my own terms. Yuki, this doesn't mean that I'm cutting ties with you. Whenever you need it, you can count on me. Gadra, despite his selfish side, had another, which showed compassion and kindness to the people he was close with. He seemed to like Yuki, as his promise showed. Ahaha, I look forward to that time. Yuki nodded with a bitter smile. Well, I am a newcomer to that country now. I'll be working to earn their trust from now on, so don't expect much leverage out of me, if you had that in mind. How mean. Keep those thoughts to yourself. What nonsense. The brash fellow you are ought to handle it. Alright, those clowns are more befitting of brash, but regrettably they aren't here to say hello. Did you send them off to do some nefarious deeds? Sort of. I could tell you now, Buiud Rimuru-san will catch wind of it if I do, so too bad. Ahaha. Yes, indeed, then I won't ask. If you happen to need me, I'll be there for you. Thanks, I'll count on it, Yuki replied with a grin. He had also taken a liking to Gadra. His honest way of life sparked a bit of admiration within him. After a moment of laughter, the two shook hands. Well then, I'll be on my way. Yuki, you can go ahead and stage your coup d'etat or whatever, with as much of a ruckus or fanfare as you want. However, I get it. It's just that killing His Imperial Majesty is off the table, right? Aye. Great that you understand. Then, farewell. And so Yuki and Gadra parted ways. Gadra's request for an audience with the Emperor was granted. I suppose I should warn the Emperor. Gadra waited nervously as that though weighed on his mind. Despite the opportunity to state his plea, there was no telling if the Emperor would heed his advice. But still, he wanted to offer his final service to the benefactor whom he had served. His Imperial Majesty is expecting you, a guide called out to him. Gadra walked along the hallway, following the veiled attendant. From the polished corridor of the atrium, the sight of pink cherry blossoms slowly came into view. Eternal cherry blossoms. Their petals, on trees that were always in full bloom, were said to be a symbol of the prosperity of the empire. It is as beautiful as ever. However, it was unpopular with Japanese people who came from another world. Is that so? Was it wabi-sabi or beauty and destruction? Cherry blossoms are an ephemeral beauty, lasting only the moment they scatter in the wind. That's also a way to look at it. Isn't that right, Kondou Dono? A fierce man emerged from the shade of a sakura tree. I thought I'd hidden my presence well. You're right, Gadra answered, and took out his beloved cane. I didn't notice you at all. It was just, what's the term, foreboding. Somehow, I guess, I had an ominous feeling for whatever reason. The attendant slipped away unnoticed. I can't let you have an audience with the Emperor. Why? Gadra asked incredulously. I have no intention of giving you the reason, and it's meaningless for you to know it. First Lieutenant Kondou responded and raised one arm, holding a glossy lump of black iron in his hand. It was an Ambu, the first Japanese semi-automatic handgun. You want to kill me? Gadra asked, eyes wide, glaring at him, but it did nothing to perturb First Lieutenant Kondou. Kondou, you bastard. Just as he was about to raise his voice further, Gadra collapsed as a sharp pain tore through his chest. He hadn't let his guard down. He was well informed about guns and had kept a steady eye on Kondou's trigger finger, waiting for the sound of a gunshot, which never came. And more importantly, as he lay there, his consciousness rapidly fading, he realized something. With his last bit of life, he noted that the pain in his chest came from his back, and it wasn't caused by a bullet but the stab of a knife. Meaning this wasn't the work of Kondou, but someone else. Why did you interfere? Because this man is dangerous. If we allowed this traitor to live, he would have hindered the next reign of His Imperial Majesty. The someone's voice sounded familiar to Gadra, but it seemed entirely out of place. He had to wonder if his mind was playing tricks on him on the verge of death. But this man was still His Imperial Majesty's friend. Gadra's senses grew fainter by the moment as the voice of Kondou faded away. At last, Gadra could feel death's cold embrace. Is this poison? What a thorough job. All of this is punishment for betraying His Imperial Majesty Rudra, huh? A moment longer, and he would let out his final breath. Lying among the undying petals dancing through the air, Gadra played his final gamble. He invoked a spell he had prepared in advance, and lost consciousness on the spot.